Alright my G's, today I'm going to show you how to put some more life into your Neurofunk bass stabs. We're going to be using Vital for this, and I've got this preset as a free download for you guys. All you have to do is go over and join me on Patreon as a free member, and yeah, as a free member on there you can access this download for this patch, which I've called Shin Twister. Okay, so here's how it sounds with a beat, and these are the drums I made in a recent YouTube video as well. So I like these because they have a nice variation to them. They've got a nice, a way that the sort of sound twists and turns a little bit through the kind of different, different stab hits. Okay. So let's break it down. Basically, I've used pretty much all of the effects apart from the phaser. So quite a lot there. I've used all the oscillators as well. I've used all the filters. I've used everything pretty much. And 2 LFOs in Vital. Okay, so the first oscillator is a it's not a sine wave. If I turn this low pass off, it's a saw wave, right? Saw wave at -12 with a little -23 on the fine tuning here. This one is, the unison is off. It's just one voice here. Let's go ahead and turn the low pass filter on here. So I've put a low pass on, and my first LFO1 here is doing the main movement, and this is it's sort of like a saw down, but I've just put a little bit of detail into it, so it kind of has this attack part here, then it curves down nicely, then it kind of flattens out, and then it drops down again in a linear kind of way. Okay, and so that's on the low pass here of the saw wave. So it goes from 0 up to sort of 0.7 up here, and obviously it doesn't quite reach all the way because the saw is actually a bit lower here. It doesn't quite go to the top. The smoothing is up as well, and also as you see, the speed here is set to quarter notes and then triplets. Okay, so it almost in the sort of in the MIDI that I've written, how long I've held it, it's sort of I've held it to a point where it just about starts to repeat again, So it has this kind of effect that the end part has like another little round of the LFO almost, so it's a bit more funky like that, but yeah, so that speed is just set up, to give me that little extra funk at the end, Okay, so low pass on the saw wave. Next, let's add in our next one then. So oscillator 2 is our main sub bass. It's underneath -24, and it's just a sine wave. And there's a slight bit of detuning. It's just up +3, but that's pretty much it. It doesn't do too much else here. Once we add in our third oscillator, this is where I have to start talking about the FM routing, which is really important, okay? So the third oscillator is, if I take up my low pass off again, you can see what it is. It's actually a square this time. So this is an octave higher than the saw. So we have a square here at 0 with a little bit of detuning at -11. And this one's been unisoned a lot, a fair amount. 3 voices, 14%. And here we put the low pass back on again. And this is then, also modulating on the LFO1. So that main LFO is, bringing me up sort of around 0.289. So it's not going up as high as the saw wave was. And now it's important to sort of discuss the FM as well, right? So the FMs are, I'm modulating them but on a different LFO, but basically that's how it sounds without the FMs. So it's quite smooth, The FMs make it a lot more aggressive. Okay, so the first FM is obviously they're both actually coming in from 3. So this low pass square wave is running into oscillator 2, and that's at about 16%. And in oscillator 1, it's running in, but it starts at 0. Okay, and this is where I use LFO2 to put in, basically the variation that makes the stabs exciting, you know. So I have the triangle set up here, and it's on sync mode, so it will basically keep playing throughout the project, and it won't like re-trigger every time the MIDI re-triggers. So there's always going to be this changing. It's always going to be changing as the bass line is progressing, right? No matter what the MIDI is doing. And so this is basically modulating the amount of the FMs. Okay, so the second oscillator here, the FM is going up. As you see here, it starts at sort of 16% and it goes up 0.192. So you can see how far it's going up, you know, around up towards sort of 10 o'clock or something like that. So that's where you hear like some of the stabs are a bit softer and some of them are a bit more aggressive, you know. So that's where the key variation comes in on this patch, you know. And it's the same for this first oscillator. Obviously they start at 0, so it's completely off, but it goes up quite high. It goes up to like, again, sort of around 10 o'clock here, 10:30 or so. Now also in line with that, I've also brought the low pass up a bit here. So it only goes up a tiny amount, but it does make a nice little difference in the whole context. So it goes up, you know, just sort of 0.1. So that low pass opens up. It gets like a little bit brighter as well. Okay, this is all going to sound better once I put the filters on as well in a second. Okay. But you can already hear how we have the variation built in. So you have like the stabs that are like sometimes softer and sometimes harsher with the with this slow triangle that I've put in here. Okay, to ramp up the amount of the FM, because the FM is what's creating that extra grit, you know. There's a little bit of white noise. It's very subtle. Just on my LFO1 here, as you see, but I only mix it in 0.08 here, 0.098. There you go. All right, so oscillator 3. So this is the square wave with it's been low passed. That goes through a filter here on its own, a phaser positive filter with a little cut-off movement as well. Okay, and oscillator 1, which is our saw wave, right? That goes, it's difficult to remember because I've low passed them, you know. But yeah, and I always get them confused, square waves and saw waves. Like I always cross them over in my brain, you know. Because they're quite similar in a sense, you know. But yeah, this saw wave goes through a different filter, and this is the phaser negative. So I've done one on the positive, one on negative, just to create two kind of different sort of characters, you know. Both filters have got a bit of drive on. And then, as you see, there's some movement as well. So the LFO1, this sort of main fast stab LFO, essentially, I bounce it to the left on filter 2 here. So yeah, that saw wave has this phaser negative filter on, which is like sort of programmed to go to the left every time, and the opposite way for the square wave down here, it goes to the right every time. All right, so they're kind of crossing over a little bit. You know, you got this kind of like overlapping kind of motion going on, you know. Anyway, let's turn on some effects because it'll make the sound quality a lot nicer, right? So I start off with a flanger. It's nice to put this random pitch movement into everything together. So it's just up about 20%, and I haven't adjusted anything else apart from the center, which I brought quite low to 65 Hertz, because when it's up high, it doesn't target the sound as well. Down here, it sort of starts lower and it targets the whole sound. Like it kind of starts lower and, you know, locks in that flangey kind of pitch movement from the bottom of the sound, and then it kind of works upwards. It kind of sounds like that. So yeah, I like to put the flanger in first before the distortion and the chorus. Okay, so next to the distortion, it's fairly aggressive already because of those FMs, so I don't go too high here. It's only around 3.5 dB on the soft clipping. Now the chorus. Yeah, that really, really helps it a lot, makes it a lot more natural and a bit smoother, because, yeah, they were quite aggressive before, the kind of stabs, with the FM, but the chorus does a great job at sort of taking a distorted sound and softening it a little bit as well, so it adds a great stereo image. All I've done is pretty much left it how it is and just mixed it in a little bit here, about 30%, so it softens the sound as well as creating a more stereo version, Then I've used the multi-band compressor as well. So this really exaggerates the whole sound, okay? Because I've used it in such a way where the multi-band is on and I don't change anything apart from the attack and the release, okay? I bring the attack up to about 70%, the release down to 23%, and that creates this sort of almost like a saturation sound that's happening in the chorus, in the compressor, It's not really a compressor at this point, it's basically saturation. And then I just mix in that sort of signal from 0 up to like 0.347 here on the LFO. So you have this brightness, this dynamic brightness boost on everything. Okay, it's a trick I do quite a lot, yeah? Then a little EQ. I'm just sort of boosting here. I don't know why it's just, 1,300 hertz, the sort of treble area. Putting a bit more bite in there. Then we add a bit of reverb, and here it's mixed in around 14%. Makes quite a massive difference because it just gives you all that background detail to the sound, So again, even though it's 14%, it still makes a massive difference having that on, especially with stabs, because they're short and intermittent sounds. Reverb tends to work best on those. If you had like a massive, like long sustained bass or reese, the reverb might just sort of cloud the whole sound a little bit if you use too much. But on the stabs, you've always got this gap after them, so the reverb is great there because you can sort of enjoy the effect of the reverb on its own as well, Then I've got a touch of delay. It's really, really small. It's only 1.5% or so. Just puts in these little delay tails that are sort of on an offbeat, sort of 1/8 dotted ping pong mode, but they're very, very subtle, as I mentioned, only 1.5% pretty much, And then I finish off with a filter, and this is, the cutoff is around 250. Goes up a little bit to the right, so 19.9 here. And I've mixed it in only about 40% or so, because it's a sort of notch filter, right? Just putting in this extra notch movement onto everything, so it kind of just like gives you that final polish of like shaping everything all together, And I do it in this sort of area here, around 250 up, and it probably goes up to, I don't know, maybe 1K or just a bit under, something like that, So it's kind of the mid-range area that I'm giving a bit more movement to, because that's where the sort of expression of the sound is often, And so I haven't gone too low to take out any bass either. So yeah, that's quite important not to do that, because I still wanted all the bass in the sound, So let's have a listen again with the beat. Yeah, and you can basically hear now what the FMs really do, okay? So now that we've got all of our effects back on, if I take the FMs off, so they are responsible for the whole kind of aggression of the sound, So that's why they were the key things to modulate on this slower triangle here, because as you can see, if I do it a bit more, let's try a more subtle version here. So let's go like sort of halfway for both, and a little bit lower here. That's also quite good. You know, it's a bit more of a softer version of the sound. But I quite liked it having it a little bit harder up. And so now you hear these moments, like when the stab is playing, like it's sometimes there'll be like a sweet spot that happens where like you get that perfect blending of like the FM's like adding this extra distorted kind of grit, like just in line with like the right moment on the stab, and then you get this like nice kind of natural growl sound happening, you know, like there, womp, 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 womp. Like it had like in that sort of, you listen to sort of the third or fourth stab, womp, 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 womp. It has like when you hear those stabs in, like when they're sort of closer together in that part where it's a bit faster, you really hear like the modulation of the FM changing, and so it gives you this like sort of this nice sort of talking vibe to the stabs essentially. You know, it's like they really, as the pitch goes down, the FM's also changing, and then you've got this really nice how else can I word it? Yeah, this not just variation, but it's like it's just this really nice effect where the sound is just it is just variation, you know, but I'm trying to think of it becomes like maximally expressive at that point, you know, like you've got a lot of expression in it because one, the pitch is changing, and two, the FM character is changing along with it, so you get this really nice overall vibe from the changes, you know. So that's really like Neurofunk for me, because it's a combination of the pitch and the character changes like happening together that give you that like that nice natural kind of feeling, you know. So yeah, and it's quite simple, as I mentioned. You know, it's just done with in this case with the FM, and that's one thing on Vital that you can always sort of rely on. You know, the FMs between the sine waves and the saw waves and square waves, you can always get great results, you know, doing that. And then, you know, they're a great thing to modulate on this sort of slower, this sort of variating LFO. Okay, so the LFO one was set up to control like the main movement of all the stabs, you know. And the second one is doing our variation. Okay, so it's a simple way to approach synthesis. It's something I do a lot on my patches, you know, have that sort of first LFO to set up all the main movements of the sound, and have another one to put in that extra extra magic, so that the sound, you know, becomes nice evolves nicely over time, you know. So that's the Shin Twister. I hope you guys enjoyed that preset today, and make sure you go ahead and grab it on my Patreon and download it for free, and feel free to use it in your projects. Could be a nice little addition in one of your tracks if you're missing a particular sound in a certain section, you know. So yeah, that's it from me today. Thank you very much for watching. Appreciate you guys a lot on the channel. Leave a comment and a like as well, and subscribe if you're new. And also check out the links in my video description as well for preset packs for Vital, Serum, Current and Phase Plant. And come along and join me on Patreon. Even as a free member, you can get this as a free download. Or if you want to subscribe and join my Discord, we have a private Discord, which is great. And we do feedback and live streams and all kinds of things in there. And then also, if you guys want mixing and mastering lessons or mastering work done on your track, then send me an email or book in for a one-on-one mentorship session. All right, that's it for me today. More from me very soon. Much love.